All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to get into something that, on the surface at least, seems pretty straightforward, right? Sourcing reliable chairs. Like, how hard can that be?
Yeah, you'd think it'd be easy. I mean, we all use chairs every day.
Right. But if your business is selling them online, like on Wayfair or Amazon or furnishing a restaurant, or really any situation where seating matters, getting the right chairs can save you a ton of headaches down the line. And probably more importantly, a ton of money.
Oh, yeah, tons. This is one of those things that can really make or break you, actually.
Exactly. And that's what our mission is today, to give you the insights to avoid those pitfalls and make smarter sourcing choices.
It is. And, the thing is, buying chairs might seem like a pretty basic transaction,
Mhm.
but it's actually way more complex than most people think.
Yeah, I mean, there's the quality, the materials, understanding what your customers actually want, and even just how those chairs get delivered. There's a lot to it.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. And this is where our deep dive today comes in, especially if you're, navigating these exact challenges.
Absolutely.
This is going to help you see beyond just the price tag, which is often, step one for so many people.
Oh, for sure. And our guide for all of this is Sunbin Qi, the CEO of ASKT. He's been exporting furniture across Europe for nearly 2 decades now, so he's got a wealth of real-world experience.
He really does. I
Yeah.
mean, this isn't just some theory.
No, not at all.
This is about avoiding the actual mistakes that he has seen, countless businesses stumble into over the years.
Precisely. So think of this deep dive as a shortcut to avoiding those costly mistakes.
Yeah, think of this like Sunbin's giving you, his cheat codes.
Cheat codes, I like it.
Yeah, we're going to really dive into his experience to understand, like, the hidden complexities, the things people often overlook when they're just trying to source what we so casually call a dining chair.
Right.
Our whole goal is to get you thinking differently about sourcing. Shift your focus from just that initial price to really thinking about the true cost and value over time.
Okay, so let's just jump right into it then. And Sunbin, he calls this first part the illusion of cheap.
That's a good one.
Right. I mean, we've all seen them, those incredibly low prices online. Maybe you're browsing Alibaba and you see this chair that looks good and it's way cheaper than anything else you've seen.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And it's super tempting to just jump on that deal, right?
Oh, it's so tempting. You see that price and you think, oh my gosh, I just found the deal of the century. I'm going to save so much money.
Yeah, you think you've struck gold.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But our experience, and this is something Sunbin talks about a lot from his early days, is that chasing the absolute cheapest option, what seems like a bargain, almost always leads to like a whole cascade of problems.
Yeah, those problems end up costing way more in the long run.
Oh, way more. We're talking wobbly chairs.
Yeah.
Fabric that starts falling apart. It's classic penny wise, pound foolish.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He even tells this one story, from when he was first starting out. And he really focused on just getting the lowest price possible.
Yeah. What happened?
Well, within just a few months, he was just flooded with customer complaints. Like, it was just a nightmare scenario.
Ugh, that's the worst.
And we're not talking about minor issues here. I mean, some of these chairs were so wobbly, like they were straight up dangerous.
Yikes.
Screws would come loose all the time. The fabric colors would fade like crazy. And the worst part,
What's that?
I mean, the worst case scenario actually happened. Like, these chairs were actually breaking, like completely breaking under normal use.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's scary.
It is. And it really shows, like, the real risks when you make a price the only thing you think about.
Yeah, and what's even more interesting is how some of these factories can offer such low prices, right? So Sunbin, he explains that some factories, they cut costs in really sneaky ways, like things you wouldn't notice right away. So maybe they use a slightly thinner metal in the frame, or they skimp on the foam padding, or use really cheap screws.
Yeah, that's something I'd never even think to check, like the thickness of the metal.
Exactly right. And these subtle changes, they don't always show up when you're just looking at a sample.
That makes sense. So as a buyer, what are some questions I should be asking to try and uncover these kinds of hidden downgrades? Like, what should I be looking for beyond just the sample itself?
That's a great question. So beyond the sample, you really want to dig into the specifics. Ask for detailed specs, like what's the exact thickness or gauge of the metal they're using?
Okay.
What's the density of the foam padding? Where are the screws sourced from? What grade are they?
Right, those are good ones.
Yeah, don't just accept vague answers like, oh yeah, it's high quality metal. Push for specific numbers.
Yeah, push for details.
Yeah, and maybe even consider third-party verification if you have any doubts.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. Sunbin also recommends asking about the factory's quality control process.
Yeah.
But not just for the finished chair, but like at the component level. Are they checking the metal, the foam, the screws before they even go into the chair?
Right, because I could see a situation where the sample looks perfect, it passes the eye test, ticks all the
No,
boxes,
exactly.
but then the whole shipment arrives and the paint finish is all messed up.
Ugh, but
Or, like Sunbin said, the chairs start breaking after just a few months of use.
yeah, that's a recipe for disaster.
It is. And then you've got more returns, your customer service team is overwhelmed, and you start getting those negative online reviews.
Yep, and then your brand's reputation takes a hit.
Exactly. And that can be hard to recover from.
Exactly, and this is where this concept of total value becomes so important.
Yeah, tell me more about that.
So Sunbin, he shifted ASKT's focus away from just offering the cheapest chair possible
Okay.
to actually engineering chairs that are designed to last.
Built to last, yeah.
Yeah, and their investment in in-house testing, which we'll talk about more in a minute, really shows this commitment to long-term quality.
That's great.
So it's not just about that initial sticker price.
Right.
It's about what they call the overall cost of ownership.
Yeah.
Thinking about durability, customer satisfaction, and ultimately your brand's reputation.
That's a great way to look at it. Okay, so that leads perfectly into this next point, which is, well, it's kind of obvious when you think about it, the absolute necessity of testing.
Oh, testing is so important.
And you mentioned this earlier, in markets like the EU, customer expectations are really high. And Sunbin really stresses this when he talks about safety and how durable these chairs are expected to be.
Oh, yeah. Those are huge markets, and they have high standards.
They do.
And it's true. In places like the EU and North America,
Yeah.
a chair, it's not just a piece of furniture. It's an investment. People expect it to withstand, like, daily use, whether it's in their home or in a busy restaurant.
Right, it's got to hold up to a lot.
It does. And then there's the whole journey from the factory to the customer's doorstep.
Oh, yeah.
The logistics, that involves a lot of handling, a lot of bumps along the way.
Yeah.
So the chair needs to be tough enough to survive all of that, too.
So how do you actually, make sure a chair can withstand all of that? How do you test for that?
Well, Sunbin gives some pretty specific details about how ASKT handles this.
Yeah.
And it's impressive. We're talking about over $20,000 invested in professional testing equipment.
Wow.
And they have an entire team, 11 full-time quality control inspectors.
That's a serious commitment.
Oh, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
And he then goes on to describe some of the specific tests they run, and it really highlights what goes into making sure a chair is both durable and safe.
Yeah, what are some of those tests?
So they test for armrest and seat durability.
Mm-hmm.
Like how much weight can they handle? How do they hold up under repeated pressure? They do static and dynamic load testing. So can the chair handle someone, plopping down heavily or just sitting for long periods? They have seat impact tests, which basically simulate someone dropping onto the chair.
Yeah.
And then they test the backrest strength and also how much the joints wear down over time.
Those are really interesting tests.
Yeah, it's pretty comprehensive.
So these aren't just random tests they've come up with, are they?
No, not at all. Sunbin actually points out that they align with recognized industry standards.
Okay, that makes sense.
So EN 12520, which is the key benchmark in the European Union for chair safety and durability.
Right.
And then there's BIFMA, which is kind of the North American equivalent.
So they're meeting the established expectations for furniture quality in these big markets.
Exactly. They're going above and beyond to meet those standards. And there's another thing that I found super interesting.
What's that?
They use body cameras during inspections.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's total transparency and accountability. You don't see that very often in the furniture industry.
I can imagine.
And the fact that they're willing to share this footage with buyers if
Yeah.
you request it, it just shows how much confidence they have in their quality control process. They're not just ticking a box. Testing is a core part of how they operate.
Okay, so we've established that quality is crucial and how, rigorous testing is how you achieve that. But even a really well-made chair, it's not going to sell if it doesn't resonate with your specific customer.
Oh, absolutely not. You have to know your customer.
So let's get into this aspect of understanding what your target market needs and wants. What are their preferences? Sunbin has some really great insights here, and he starts by talking about the differences between what sells well in, say, China versus Germany.
Yeah, good example. Because what people find appealing, both aesthetically and functionally, can be totally different in different markets.
Totally. And he gives some really concrete examples. Europeans, they generally prefer tighter upholstery, with cleaner, more precise stitching.
Yeah, the crisp, tailored look.
Exactly. And they tend to favor matte finishes over glossy ones.
Yeah, that's true.
And then you've got color trends, which are constantly evolving.
Oh, yeah, always changing.
He mentioned some specific examples like nude tones, greige, and forest green, which have been popular lately. And they track these trends really closely.
Yeah, got to stay ahead of the curve.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the look of the chair, right?
No, definitely not.
I mean, the materials themselves, they need to be chosen based on where that chair is going to be used.
Right, the environment.
Exactly. So Sunbin, he says that in Europe, for example, there are higher demands on fabrics because of things like humidity.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Central heating is a lot more common over there, and there's more exposure to natural light.
Right.
All of these things can really affect how a fabric holds up over time.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So to really get a handle on these nuances of, the European market specifically, ASKT invested in this pretty amazing resource.
Okay, tell me about it.
So it's a 1,200 square meter research and development center. Yeah. And this includes 6 mock-up showrooms that are designed to look like typical German family homes.
That's so smart.
It is, right.
So they can see how these chairs actually look in a realistic setting.
Exactly. And he even mentions some of the things they specifically evaluate in these showrooms, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, like what?
So they look at how the chair's style appears under natural daylight, not just like showroom lighting.
Oh, that's a good point.
So how does it actually look in a real home?
Right.
They also check if the chair fits comfortably under a standard 75-centimeter dining table, which, is the norm in a lot of European homes.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a basic thing, but it's so important.
It is. And then they even simulate, like, common dining area setups,
Ooh, wow.
like the kinds of setups you'd find in, different European cities. So they're really thinking about how that chair is going to be used in real life.
Yeah, that's really going the extra mile to understand their customers.
Absolutely. And speaking of real life and how a chair is actually used, let's talk about fabrics because, they're a really big deal. And Sunbin, he's very clear about this. He says that issues with fabrics are one of the top reasons why people return furniture.
Oh, yeah, makes sense. We've all been there. You get a chair, and then the fabric starts fading or pilling, or it stretches out of shape.
Or it gets discolored.
Yeah, or gets discolored. It's so frustrating.
It is. So Sunbin then gets into like the specific criteria that ASKT uses to select their fabrics, and it's pretty intense.
Oh, yeah. Give me the details.
Okay, so for example, they insist on a Martindale abrasion resistance rating of at least 30,000 rubs.
That's a good standard.
It is, right? Like, that gives you a really good indication of how durable that fabric is going to be.
Yeah, how well it can withstand, like, regular wear and tear.
Exactly. And they test color fastness.
Right. So how well the color holds up.
To light. And they do both dry and wet rub tests.
Okay, that's thorough.
Yeah. And they also look at the fabric's resistance to pilling, like, those little fuzzy balls that form on fabric over time.
Yeah, the belling.
And they're very strict about compliance with RECH regulations.
Good, because those are important.
Yeah. And that means no heavy metals, no chemical odors, and they even prohibit the use of recycled fabric scraps.
Interesting.
And they don't just rely on the fabric supplier's word for all of this. They actually have their own in-house fabric testing lab.
Wow, that's impressive.
It is. And they test every single roll of fabric before it's used in production. So they're really trying to catch any potential problems before they even become problems.
That's a really proactive approach.
It is. And he mentions for businesses that are in like hospitality or retail where the furniture just gets more wear and tear.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
They can recommend performance fabrics. These are designed to be super stain resistant and easy to clean, which is a big deal in those environments.
Yeah, that's crucial in those settings.
It is. Now, of course, a lot of businesses, they want to be able to offer their customers, some level of personalization.
Oh, yeah, customization.
Right, it's huge. And Sunbin, he addresses this. So whether it's, changing the chair base, offering different velvet options, or even like adjusting the seat width, he assures buyers that these kinds of customizations are possible.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, and often they can do it really quickly. Like he says their sample development team can turn around custom prototypes in as little as 10 days.
Oh, that's fast.
It is. And he attributes that speed to their really experienced pattern maker and having multiple R&D facilities.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But importantly, he really stresses that this flexibility, being able to customize, doesn't mean they compromise on quality control.
Right. Got to maintain those standards.
Yeah. Every custom design, it goes through the same testing, the same quality audits before they'll even think about mass producing it.
That's really reassuring for buyers.
It is. Okay, so we've talked about sourcing, quality control, understanding your market. But there's another aspect that can be easily overlooked, and it can have a huge impact on your profitability.
What's that?
Packaging.
Packaging.
Really? Yeah. Sunbin calls it packaging as profit protection. And when you think about it, it makes total sense.
Yeah, so?
Like, you can source the best chairs in the world, but if they arrive at your customer's door all damaged, it kind of negates all that effort, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And damaged goods during shipping, like Sundin points out, it can eat away at your profit.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Through refunds, replacements, you name it.
Exactly. And then you've got unhappy customers leaving bad reviews.
Ugh, the worst.
Like, imagine you order a beautiful chair online and it shows up all scratched and dented.
Yeah, not a good first impression.
Not at all. And that's not just bad for the customer, it's bad for your brand.
For sure.
And then on top of all that, there's the actual cost of the packaging itself. And that's been going up, especially with regulations like the EU plastic packaging tax.
Oh, yeah, that's adding a whole other layer of cost.
It is. So this is where ASKT's move towards zero plastic packaging is really smart.
Okay, so how are they doing that?
So they're using alternatives like honeycomb cardboard for internal cushioning, paper tape instead of plastic adhesive tape.
Okay.
They use non-woven fabric covers to prevent scratches, and they reinforce the edges of the packaging for more stability, when the chairs are stacked during shipping.
Those are all great solutions.
Yeah, and the benefits, they go beyond just protecting the chairs. Sunbin mentions that this shift also helps reduce, plastic-related import taxes.
Right, it's a direct cost saving.
Exactly. And then you've got the brand image boost.
Right, being seen as environmentally conscious.
Exactly. Which is a big deal for a lot of consumers these days. He even says that some of their clients actually highlight the eco-friendly packaging in their product listing.
Oh, that's smart marketing.
It is. Okay, so let's move on to another important area, which is navigating all the certifications and compliance requirements.
Yeah, that can be a real headache, especially in those highly regulated markets like Europe.
Oh, absolutely. And Sunbin, he really understands how strict those requirements can be.
So what does ASKT do to help buyers with all of that?
So he lists a whole bunch of certifications and documents that they provide.
Okay.
So things like ISO 9001 certification, which covers their quality management system. They provide detailed reports from all of their product testing.
Right.
And they have documents to prove that their materials and fabrics comply with regulations like REACH, EN 1112520, and BIFMA.
Yeah, those are the big ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they even offer customized labeling and barcodes, which can save buyers a ton of time.
Oh, yeah, that's a huge help.
Especially if they're selling on multiple platforms.
Oh, sure.
And for those who are selling specifically on platforms like, Wayfair or Amazon, ASKT goes a step further. They actually help with uploading all the product specifications and the third-party test results.
Oh, wow. So they're really streamlining the whole compliance process.
Exactly. All right, so let's be realistic for a second. Even with the best quality control in the world, sometimes things just go wrong.
Yeah, that's true. It happens.
And that's when the quality of after-sales support from your supplier, it becomes super important.
Oh, yeah, absolutely critical.
And Sunbin really emphasizes how important it is for a supplier to respond effectively when those inevitable problems pop up.
So how does ASKT handle that?
Well, they have this commitment to what they call radical transparency, and that's a key differentiator for them.
Radical transparency. I like that.
Yeah, it basically means that if a problem comes up, they don't try to hide it or downplay it.
Right.
They're upfront about it. They'll actually provide video documentation of the issue.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they'll conduct thorough investigations to figure out what went wrong, why did this happen? And they work quickly to find a solution. And they have experienced English-speaking teams in both Suzhou and Tianjin, so communication is clear and efficient.
Oh, that's good, because communication can be a real challenge when you're dealing with overseas suppliers.
Oh, absolutely. And another thing that's really helpful is that they track every single order.
Really?
Every single one, yeah. And each order has its own dedicated quality control report.
Wow, so if a customer reports a problem or if a product gets returned, they can trace it back.
Exactly. They can see exactly where in the production process that issue might have occurred.
That's so helpful for problem solving.
It is, and it helps prevent similar problems from happening again in the future.
Right, that's key.
So, throughout this whole deep dive, we've really seen that Sunbin, he wants to position ASKT as more than just a factory.
Yeah, more than just a manufacturer.
Yeah, he describes them as like a sourcing ecosystem.
A sourcing ecosystem.
Yeah, and to back that up, he gives some details about their infrastructure.
Okay, what kind of details?
So they actually oversee a network of over 20 partner factories.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is, and these are all carefully vetted factories that they supervise.
Oh, okay.
They have their own in-house sample development center, and it's designed with those, German lifestyle setups we were talking about.
Right, to get that real-world feel.
Exactly. And they even have their own in-house capabilities for welding technology, base design, and they do advanced 360-degree axis research and development.
Wow, so they're not just relying on outside vendors for everything.
Nope. They're really handling a lot in-house. And they have a whole team dedicated to sourcing materials, and they audit their fabric and hardware suppliers every quarter.
That's a high level of oversight.
It is. And they're really active on platforms like LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram.
Interesting.
Yeah, they're sharing their knowledge, they're engaging with the industry, and they're staying up to date on all the latest trends.
That's smart.
Yeah. And they work with a really diverse range of clients. So we're talking big furniture retail chains, restaurant suppliers, e-commerce platforms like Wayfair and Amazon, importers and wholesalers across Europe.
So they've got a pretty good understanding of what different markets need.
They really do. And Sunbin, he emphasizes that they understand, the balancing act in the furniture sourcing business.
Yeah.
It's about managing cost, speed, and reliability.
Right. You can't just focus on one of those things.
You can't. You got to find that sweet spot where all three of those things are working together.
Yeah, that's the key.
All right, so as we wrap up this deep dive, I think the main takeaway here is that sourcing reliable chairs, it's really about building a strategic partnership.
Yeah, it's not just about finding the cheapest option.
No, not at all. It's about looking at the total value you're getting. And that includes, making sure those chairs are rigorously tested for durability and safety.
Absolutely.
Understanding your target market, what are their preferences, what are their needs, using high-quality materials, and having a supplier that's going to be there for you, if and when problems arise.
Right. That after-sale support is crucial.
And Sunbin's experience, it really shows that, avoiding those cheap deals, the ones that seem too good to be true,
They often are.
they often are,
Yeah.
because they can lead to a whole bunch of hidden costs down the line.
Yep. And a whole lot of headaches.
So, building that trust with your customers, protecting your brand's reputation, it all comes down to consistently delivering quality chairs.
Well said.
And that, I think, is a great place to leave it. But, we always like to end with something for you to think about, to kind of ponder on your own.
A little food for thought.
Exactly. So here's something to consider. How could a deeper understanding of your supply chain, going beyond just the price, how could that change your business? How could it affect your customer satisfaction in the long run?
Yeah, those are good questions.
And maybe think about this. What part of your current sourcing process, like what specific aspect, might be worth a deep dive of its own? All right, that's all for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for listening.